Glad to have you join us on today's market report on today's show, ADBN Television, where we are talking about the money supply, the second segment of our show, talking about issues around money supply and policy of the CBN to ensure that money supply is limited in a way to also avoid the impact on the economy as well as on inflation generally. And all right, and joining me on to discuss this issue is no other than someone who has been a player, an insider in the area of Nigerian economy, talking about Muktar Muhammed, will be joining me all the way from Lagos. A very good day to you, Mr. Muktar Muhammed.
Thank you so much. I hope it's not raining in
No,
Abuja like it's raining
Abuja
today
just
in
got his own
Lagos.
share of the rain. All right, so let's get started. First and foremost, there is a breaking news. NNPC is having a change leadership. What is your reaction to NNPC change leadership as we speak right now?
Well, not surprising. I think people have anticipated this a long time ago. We should not forget that Mark Kyari has been there until during President Buhari time, and he was the only one that was retained by President Tinubu when he came to power. I think at that time the president said they were keeping him there for continuity, and because of that, we just had the passage of the Freedom of Information Bill and the Petroleum Industry Bill. And at that time, the president was looking forward to take a very hard decision, the removal of subsidy, and he needed somebody that has been in the system for a long time to be able to drive that reform. I think we've entered the critical stage of that reform now, whereby before he was removed, we got to hear from them that they were about to, in the last stage of coming into the capital market, even if eventually that statement was removed. But again, it shows that they were about coming to the market, and maybe the president is looking at that and saying, okay, we are now at this critical level. I need people that have both a global experience and also that have been in this industry that may not necessarily be in somebody that has been in the NNPC, because what we have seen thus far for a very long time is that almost 90% of all those that are group managing director have always been people that have been inside their trade in the NNPC. I stand to be corrected. I think for a long time, this is the first person that is coming outside of the NNPC.
Is the second. We have Ibe
Yeah,
Kachuku. Ibe
okay.
Kachuku came from Shell.
Yes,
So,
Ike Kachuku, yes. But again, you could also talk about Ike Kachuku, and the same thing. He came also as the vice president of Mobi Producing, and also he's coming as a Renation Capital Group MD. And remember that that group just acquired one of the biggest assets from Shell, and approval was given to them by the same NNPC that is now coming to head.
hey,
So
exactly.
a lot is expected of him because he has been in the private sector. If you look at his profile, you see a man that has been in that sector for a very long time. He passed all through the rank of Shell especially. I think that's majorly where he has plied his trade, and until he went into Renation Capital before this his current employment. So a lot is expected of him, and I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that we could see the NNPC becoming a global player, like what they've said they want to be.
Exactly. Like the Saudi Arabia and Co, the Brazilian oil company and others like that. But let's go take a look at the issue of the day. And the issue of the day is about how money supply, drop amid CBN tight monetary policy. First and foremost, the net foreign exchange reserve NFA 23.11 billion, highest level FX accretion in 3 years. It's a breaking news also that CBN is celebrating. I don't know whether you have seen that news. Our net foreign exchange reserve NFER has increased to 23.11 billion, and the central bank governor is celebrating this feat. That in the last 3 years, this is the first time we'll be having such huge of foreign reserve in Akiti. What's your reaction to that also?
Well, we have to celebrate every milestone. I mean, as it is now, we have to celebrate every milestone. Remember, at a point, they said our reserve was even less than 3 billion.
Exactly, exactly.
Everything. And so, and he met it according to him, he met it about at least 13 billion. And they've raised it to 23 billion. I think it's something to celebrate. But in celebration of that, well, two things happen when you see this kind of performance. One, we'll see that that means we have enough to drive imports into our economy. Then secondly, that means we also have that to attract foreign investors to say, okay, they have enough for a two-way exchange system. So if you are celebrating that now you can drive import into the country, you can also be able to celebrate foreign direct investors or foreign petroleum investors that will have to come in with FX into the economy. I think that would be good. But if we are just celebrating the fact that we have this 23 billion in terms of net, and then we are still struggling with the exchange rate at 1,500, 1,600, then it called for concern. If what I expect today, I expect that with this news, ordinarily the naira should just be like we'll say in the capital market or in the story saying that the naira should be on full beat by now. With such a result, people should be thinking of changing their dollars to naira. That should be what should be happening. But if it's not happening, then that means there's still a lot of work to be done. So I congratulations to the CBN management team for what they've done. But again, the time that we can celebrate this is when we see a stronger naira via this information.
Exactly. I want to talk about stronger naira. My concern as I look at this particular news was that how sustainable is this feat that we are celebrating? Can they really hold on for the next 6-8 months? Or from your own perspective, do you think they can sustain it?
Well, sustainability is based on what I just said, attracting inflow, foreign direct investor, foreign portfolio investors. I mean, they need to do that. Then improving oil production also, because that's our key foreign FX earners. And that is why the current change in the management team of the NNPC should be something that should drive in more oil output. And then bringing more FX into the coffer of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And, the NNPC is the blood of the Nigerian economy.
Exactly.
So when you have a change like this, and then when you have the blood of the Nigerian economy, but the doctor that looked at the blood to be sure that the blood is in a good, well, how do we know that the blood is in a good condition? It's not suffering from any type of disease. It's through the CBN management of that. So the CBN is a doctor of NNPC to tell us this is what is that. So we have to hopefully believe that this will drive in investors. Then that is sustainable, improving output of oil that will make it sustainable. But if we don't do that, the 6 months that we are celebrating of having enough to import for capital importation, we might not be able to attain that. And you shouldn't forget that the last OPEC meeting, when we have not been able to meet our quota of 1,500, we've not been able to meet the president quota in terms of the oil benchmark of 2,006 barrel per day. We have not met that. That also have a far-reaching effect. That means we might not be able to fund some of our budgets. Again, when you look at local consumption also, we are still struggling with NNPC, and Dangote are still struggling in meeting the demands of Dangote, or having crude oil. At this moment, Dangote is importing some of these crude oils into the country rather than get it from the NNPC. That shows that there's a big challenge in that place. So yes, I agree with you. If we don't fix some of the things I've just mentioned, we will not be able to sustain the rally that we are seeing now.
Exactly. Very interesting and a deep perspective from you. But let's take a look at their major discussion point. I will take it off from what the CBN governor said. Deliberate policy is what that brought the CBN and the result they are celebrating today to where they are. Now, deliberate policy is one of the issues that CBN have brought out, that our money supply from over 110.94 has now dropped to 110.34 trillion naira in the first quarter of 2025. What is your perspective on this particular? Because Nigerians, as we say, we spend money and we want the money to be flowing. But CBN is trying to draw us back and say, no, that money must not be flowing. So from your own angle, let us understand this policy of the CBN.
I think you have said it well. Ordinarily, when you see this sort of policy, then you'll be looking towards relaxing in the hawkish nature of the Central Bank of Nigeria. But that could be very difficult at the moment because, again, there are other challenges. Like you said, Nigerians would like cash. And the most vibrant sector of the Nigerian economy is the SMEs place. And the most vibrant SMEs normally do cash transaction. You are talking about the market women, you're talking about those in the village, you're talking about virtually 60 to 70% of Nigerians that own business are cash driven business. But again, we have seen the advent of technology. This also is helping to bring down the demand for cash. Where we just got that in terms of reduction, in terms of liquidity in the system, it would have been good to know if this reduction was attributed to some of these digital platforms and in terms of output. And so why did we have it? I think that would have been very, very good for us. But it's good for CBN. When you say there's reduction in money, that means the CBN is not spending so much in printing of new notes, which in turn means that the CBN should be more buoyant. That means that the CBN should be able to support the real economy. So that for me would be the celebration line, not just because you have smaller money in circulation, because once that happens, you are killing one of the most vibrant sectors that is largely driven by cash. But again, if we look at it and realize that this large sector that was largely driven by cash is now being driven largely by technology, that is when we can put one on one together and say, this policy is good. We can celebrate it like you rightly pointed out, and then we'll see how this will also bring down inflation and how this will also make the CBN move from their hawkish nature of increasing interest rates to liberalizing the economy, cutting interest rates, making it easy for smaller business to have access to funds. It's after we have done this that we should be celebrating that this reduction has brought something positive to our economy.
And talking about, I agree with you to a greater extent, talking about what you may mention, because there was this argument among economists like you and I that the past CBN management, anytime they are coming about talking about money supply, they will just show us one hand and tell us they are fighting inflation. But I discovered that Yemi Cardoso style is quite different. He's not telling us he's fighting inflation per se outrightly, but he's telling us that the policy he's bringing out is aimed to bring rebuilding the confidence and reduce vulnerability in an economic aspect. So in that regard, we all know that fighting inflation is part of trying to control the money supply as we speak right now, but his own direction is quite different from the yesteryear's management of CBN. So what do you have to say about his style of dishing out his own policy?
So when you look at that style, sometimes it has its positivity, but sometimes it has ended not quite well. Like if you look at the exchange rate when it came to power, when it came as the management team, about 780 at that time. They were saying it should end at 800. It got to 960, and they moved it from 960 to 1,400. And that has been one of the worst decisions they took, and the naira kept nosediving. Yes, in terms of policy, I think sometimes they've not been consistent with their policy, especially in reaching out to the retail side of the foreign exchange market, and that's why you've seen that gap keep widening. Even sometimes when we think the gap is coming close, the gap will get wider again sometimes because of most of all these things. Yes, his policies are you cannot doubt the results, especially when it tells you that look at what I've achieved. Net interest, net foreign reserve is 23 billion from where I was coming from before. But again, you ask again, how have that impacted positively on the overall business environment in Nigeria, and most especially price stability in the FX market? I think we have not seen that. We are in a corridor of stability where we have 1,500, 1,600, but we've not enjoyed relatively consistent stability for a very long time. So that means there's still a lot of work to be done by the CBN, whether through its administrative decision or through monetary policy decisions.
Very interesting. I love the angle you came with your response to the question, because I've had other economists who sit with me on this platform, and they will say, okay, the difference in gap between the parallel market, the BDC, to what the CBN is having is quite close. 1,005. This morning is 1,536 naira in exchange to the dollar. You get it, as of this morning, and the gap to what is being sold out there is quite close based on what the CBN normally celebrates. But you have made us understand it is not that gap that is that main thing, but how we can see the possibility of this exchange changing the form of our price stability. And I know one of the responsibility of CBN is price stability. As CBN been living up to that responsibility, even though they are celebrating 23.11 billion foreign reserve, they are celebrating the gap they have been able to achieve in naira to exchange. But that price stability matters a lot to a lot of Nigerians. So what's your take on that?
I think they've not been able to maintain price stability. They've been able to maintain corridor stability. Like I said, move it to 1,400. From there, was almost hitting 2,000. They intervene. And how did they intervene? They intervene through the period change, which
Exactly.
become like their main partner, and they give them effects, and that's not different from what other CBNs have been doing before they came. But they ourselves, through Emefiele ban the period change, they came also sustain that ban before they realized that we will need this, especially the retail sector. And I think the challenge the CBN exchange rate have always have, and which we have said it on your program, is in the retail side of the market. How much liquidity do we have in that side? That is the side that is largely driven by the SME, smaller business, in looking for FX here, there, and there. And so that side has a lot of demands, and then the supply is very low. So in terms of that, I think they have intervened, but sometimes we want them to intervene more and also intervene fast. But they tend to intervene when it looks like it's getting out of hand. And once they stabilize, then it's business as usual. I think they must really take that aspect of this economy very serious. How do we stabilize the exchange rate? How do we let it run for a very long time at a consistent price? That for me is the key to whatever they are doing today.
Exactly. Very interesting. Before I let you go, I know one of your passion is the Nigerian stock market. Let's take a dive into that area. In the last 2 weeks, I know we are all away for some time because of the of your commitment to other things. But in the last 3 weeks to 2 weeks, we have seen the bearish outing, the bullish outing on the Nigerian stock market. What really informed that from your own perspective?
I think fantastic results coming out from the companies listed there.
Exactly.
Especially the financial sector. They've excited investors. You look at a stock like GTCO, you look at a stock like Zenith Bank, you look at a stock like UBA, you look at a stock like Fidelity. I think quite interesting times for investors in the market, and that have excited the market, and that's why you are seeing the kind of results you are seeing, especially in a bank like GTCO, giving investors about 7 naira 3 kobo. It has never happened before, making a total investment of about 8 naira and 3 kobo. So those are what have driven the market to where it is today. And we think going forward, we may see a lot of possibility, because it seems like President Tinubu policies tend to favor the equity market largely, especially if you're in the financial sector. But again, tend to deal with the manufacturing sector. As we are celebrating some of these fantastic results from the banking sector, from the insurance sector. You remember the Insurance Third Party Compulsory Act, which was passed in. So that also boosts our sectors. Then we look at the manufacturing sector, we realize that if you look at the kind of dividend they are giving by their price, you realize that they are really struggling to make ends meet. So the stock market have enjoyed recovery space, good year, good ending. But again, they see a lot of work to do, especially in the manufacturing sector, in the communication sector, where MTN still keep declaring those humongous losses as a result of FX revaluation, FX fluctuation. So the market is interesting. It has accumulated a result. I totally agree with you. A lot of investors are smiling, while a lot of investors that are in the manufacturing sector are not smiling here, because the result is not comparable to the price that they are selling even now, and at the price that they got it at that time.
I also heard that the oil and gas is also, people are smiling over there, even though it's a high stake for people to go over there.
Yes, people are smiling. It's just like if you are a holder of Arada today, you'll be so excited that the group managing director, the chairman of Renaissance Capital, is now the group managing director of NNPC. Ordinarily, that should interest the market. That's to tell you that he did a lot of things positive. If he goes to the Nigerian NNPC, he will do more, and that will have a snowball effect on what he has done in what he has done in NNPC, or what he has done in Arada. But again, the market, like you said, they are giving good results, Total, and also Seplat. They've come out with wonderfully good results. but there's no volume to drive it. As I'm talking to the settler, has been an offer for the past 1 month. That means it has so much to sell, and a lot of people are not buying despite this fantastic result from them. So they still need a lot of work to do, and especially when you know also once there's issue in the Niger Delta, it tends to affect them also.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Muktar. I'm very excited to have you on the show. But before I let you go, in 1 minute, what is your advice to the Central Bank of Nigeria? Dr. Yomi Cardoso cannot be coming out to celebrate that much without us also advising him to take cautionary move on some of the policies he's taking. So what's your advice to him on some of his policies as we go? 1 minute.
Only one advice I have for Dr. Yomi Cardoso. As much as it is within your hands, and I know strongly it's within your hands, let's have a fixed exchange rate.
Exactly.
Do everything within your power to make sure that we have a fixed exchange rate. Exchange rate, exchange rate, exchange rate.
Exactly.
That is the life wire of the Nigerian economy, because we are largely an import-driven economy. Must have stability in our exchange rate. Even if we want to become an export-driven economy, we need to have stability in our exchange rate. That will be able to help us to get to where we want to get. That's, for me, is my advice for him.
Exactly. And I'm taking that advice to him. He's very close to me here in the studio. His office is not far away. So I'm saying it on his platform. Dr. Yomi Cardoso, exchange rates, stabilize it, and that will be more better for Nigerian economy. Muktar Muhammed, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.